Welcome to the Sufi Heart podcast with Omid Safi, featuring teachings and stories from the wisdom of the Islamic tradition. Omid invites you to a meditation on the transformative power of love and recalling the necessity of healing our own hearts through healing the world. If you'd like to support Omid's podcast, please visit BeHereNowNetwork.com/Omid.
Hello, friends, and welcome back to the Sufi Heart podcast. We have a very special episode for you today. A few weeks ago, I had the great joy of taking a group of pilgrims to Morocco. We go there every year, and we get to share in beautiful teachings on site, in holy sites. And on this particular occasion, we had an opportunity to visit the mosque that one of the greatest of Muslim mystics, Ibn Arabi, the Andalusian sage who influences almost the whole of the Sufi tradition, everywhere in the East and the West. He used this particular mosque as a site of a retreat. And we had a chance to spend about an hour on that very premise, sitting where Ibn Arabi would have sat, taking part in prayers. And I offered some words about the life and the teachings of the man who is known in the Islamic tradition as Sheikh al-Akbar, the greatest of the teachers. So I hope that this message is one that reaches your hearts. I hope the stories and the teachings illuminate your being. And as always, if you would like to take part in any of our journeys, please join us. Our next programs are to Mecca and Medina in December, to Morocco in April, and to Turkey in June. And with that, let's welcome the being, the stories, the teachings of Ibn Arabi, Sheikh al-Akbar.
All right. So friends, this is our last and final site visit that we have. And alhamdulillah, I cannot think of a better and more appropriate place for our Moroccan journey to do than this particular mosque, because this humble little place is where Sheikh al-Akbar, Ibn Arabi, used for his personal retreat. And, you saw we're coming from lunch. We're coming, many of us, from having performed the prayers at Qaraween. The Qaraween is 7 minutes walking away from here. And by the time that Sheikh al-Akbar is in Fez, Qaraween has existed for hundreds of years. And Qaraween, more or less, looked like what it does now. And a scholar of his rank could have easily gone to the Qaraween and chosen to do his spiritual practices in the Qaraween. That's not what Ibn Arabi chose. He chose a humble place, a modest place, and inshallah, to the best that we know, and I'm personally one of those who is convinced of this, he chose this place. He writes many of his most extraordinary works in Fez. Yesterday, we spend some time talking about the mystery of the Mi'raj, the heavenly ascension, which begins with the night journey of the Prophet from Mecca to Jerusalem. And Ibn Arabi writes a whole book, Kitab al-Isra, right here in Fez. Right here in Fez. Fez is a place of extraordinary significance for him. His life is more or less divided, half of it spent in the Maghrib, half of it spent in the Mashriq, in the east. So he comes from Andalusia, he's in Morocco for a while, he performs the pilgrimage, he spends some time in what is today Turkey, and his body is laid to rest in Damascus. And his influence is everywhere. You go to Indonesia, really the most popular forms of Indonesian Islam are derived from Ibn Arabi. And what we know as modern Shiism is inseparable from Ibn Arabi. And of course, in so many parts of the Arab world, and in the Ottoman realm, there's a famous saying that we have drank milk at the breast of two mothers, Rumi and Ibn Arabi. Right? So Ottoman Islam really is like a blend of Rumi and Ibn Arabi. So his influence is, mashallah, everywhere. The people who love him, of which there are many, they refer to him as Sheikh al-Akbar, the greatest sheikh, the greatest teacher. And he's even given the honorific Muhyiddin, the one who revives the faith. It's a powerful idea. Religion sometimes needs a CPR. Sometimes religion can be dead. It appears lifeless, soulless. And then there are these people who come, who breathe new life into it. Even Imam Ghazali, his masterpiece is called the CPR of understanding religion, Ihya Ulumuddin, to revive the understanding, the science of religion. I don't pretend that I understand all of Ibn Arabi. I've devoted a few years of my life to him, but be very suspicious of people who claim to fully understand Ibn Arabi. There's a phrase that's used for him, and it's a phrase that other Sufis have used. He's an ocean without a shore. He's a boundless, limitless ocean. Many of the people who are the readers of Ibn Arabi today do so in a highly philosophical, systematic, rational way. But that's not the way that he himself writes. At least it's not the way that he writes most often. His writing, the effect of his writing is actually quite similar to reading Rumi. Rumi's writing in Persian poetry, love poetry. Ibn Arabi has, according to the conventional account, 720 books. One of them alone, I have a version of it at home, takes up this much space. So he is one of those people that things are just pouring out of him. Sometimes when they say 700 books, some of them are quite short, but one of them takes up this much space. And that specific one is called al-Futuhat al-Makkiyya, the Meccan openings, the Meccan illuminations. This morning we were talking about Salatul Fatah, right? The prayer of the opening, and he that opens, she that opens. And the Futuhat al-Makkiyya are the openings of the heart that Ibn Arabi has in Mecca. It's one of the most extraordinary texts in all of Islamic literature. And what is amazing about it is that he doesn't set out to write a systematic, logical composition. His favorite modality of experiencing God is through what he calls Kashf. And Kashf is unveiling or revealing. We always are very blessed to have a few friends on these journeys who come from South Asia. And if you come from Lahore, you know the shrine of the famous Sufi Data Ganj Bakhsh there. He's like the patron saint of at least Lahore, if not all of Pakistan. Data Ganj Bakhsh was a Persian Sufi named Hujviri who wrote a book called Kashf al-Mahjub. Unveiling the veiled beloved. To do kashf to the one who is hijabbed. And if you've grown up in a context where hijab only refers to this 4-foot piece of cloth, now I'm wearing my hijab, no, I'm not wearing my hijab. If that's the only understanding of hijab that you have, for all the political consequences of it, this is not what Ibn Arabi means. It's to remove the thing that veils you from direct presence and encounter of God with God. And Kashf is immediate. Kashf is direct. It's alchemical. It's transformative. And it doesn't follow the linear modality of thought. So there's so many stories about his life that we could talk about. And to be honest, this is the one conversation that I've sort of struggled with. Which ones do I take to tell you about? Because there's so much. So I decided to pick a few. And here's a few. Ibn Arabi doesn't grow up reading too much about Sufism. He says that when he finds his Sufi teacher, he had actually never heard of the word tasawwuf, never heard of the word Sufism or the Sufi path. But he has a number of really extraordinary experiences when he's a young man that really come to change and transform his life. One of the most extraordinary ones is as something like a boy, he has a vision. He has very powerful visionary experiences in which he doesn't just see the Habib, he sees the Prophet, he sees Moses, and he sees Jesus at the same time. Well done. And they've all come to bless him. They've come to give him the gift of this extraordinary experience that he's going to have. And he's overwhelmed, but he's also receiving of what it is. And Jesus comes up first and says, I have a gift for you. And my gift to you is zuhd, which is asceticism. Asceticism. For the Sufis, Jesus was primarily associated with detaching himself from the world and with healing. With healing. So the Sufis have so many stories about Christ, most of which are not found in the Gospels. But there are things like Jesus has abandoned all of his worldly possessions and he's in the desert. And the only thing that he has is a comb to brush his Thor-like blonde hair. And he notices an animal, a cat or a squirrel or something, that licks its paws and brushes its own fur. And he looks at the comb that he has and says, what am I doing hanging on to this comb? And so he throws away the comb. Like that willingness to let go of all attachments is what the Sufis associate with Jesus. And then, of course, the healing power. So in love poetry, what you want is for the beloved to kiss you and to breathe into you the Jesus breath. You want the kiss that has the fragrance of the breath of Jesus, because as Jesus brought the dead to life, the kiss of the beloved will bring everything in you that is dead to life. Like Rumi's poetry is filled with these kinds of metaphors. So Jesus comes and says, I brought for you the gift of zuht, of asceticism. And Ibn Arabi says, thank you very much. Seeks it. Moses brings for him this illuminated circle, like this disc that is bright like the sun. And he says, I give you the gift of understanding truly the oneness of God. Tawheed, unity, the way that people who've been blessed with knowledge from God's presence understand it. Ilm ladunni. It's what Khidr teaches Moses. And he says, thank you very much. And then comes the prophet. And Ibn Arabi is like, what's my gift? Jesus has given him asceticism. Moses has given him a true understanding of divine unity. And the prophet doesn't offer him a gift. The prophet offers him himself. And he says, grab my hand, never let go, and no harm will ever come to you. And that extraordinary encounter, and particularly the closeness with Jesus and with the prophet, would be reverberating through his life for its duration. He has an extraordinary attachment to both the prophet and also to Christ. When he's a little older, he's taken to meet the greatest philosopher in the world at that time. So this is the great philosopher Ibn Rushd, who is Averroes. Remember that the entire Greek philosophical heritage enters Europe through Averroes. If people back then would do footnotes and citations, St. Thomas Aquinas has 500 individual references to Averroes. He wouldn't know Aristotle and Plato without Averroes. It's somewhat of a tragedy that modern Western thought received the Greek philosophers through the Ibn Rushd tradition, which is the more rationalistic strand, as opposed to the Ibn Sina tradition, which always had a mystical component. So Western philosophy really goes in a much more rationalistic direction than falsafa does in the East. So the story goes that Ibn Rushd, who is about 2 generations older than Ibn Arabi, hears about this boy who has all these amazing Kashf experiences. And he's friends with Ibn Arabi's father. And so he says, I want to see this boy. And so they arrange for a meeting. And Ibn Arabi says, I was brought to the house of the judge, al-Qadi, Ibn Rushd, and he was very excited to see me. And he gets up And he comes over and he hugs me warmly and he kisses me on each cheek. And Ibn Rushd has a question. And his question is, do you get to the same place through your experience of Kashf, of this intuitive heart experience that I get to through my philosophical speculation? That's the question. Is the knowledge of the Sufis the same end goal? Does it give the same result as the process, the path that philosophers go through? At least rational philosophers. And so they sit there and they're like beholding, they're experiencing each other. And then Ibn Rushd says, yes. And Ibn Arabi says, yes. And Ibn Rushd gets really excited. It's like, oh, great, we get to the same place. And then Ibn Arabi senses that he's getting a little too happy. And mind you, he says, I was so young that my mustache hadn't come in yet. Right? I'm 12. Sitting across from the greatest philosopher in the world at the time. And so Ibn Arabi says, no. And Ibn Rushd says, no. And Ibn Arabi says, yes and no. But between the yes and the no is the secret that if I were to tell you, necks would become severed from their bodies and spirits would take to flight. And all color and blood leaves Ibn Rushd's face, and he starts shaking, and all he can say is, La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. There's no power in the world except for Allah. But more or less, I can't handle this. 12-year-old Ibn Arabi to their sheikh, the philosopher. Yes.
And the giant
Shakes and trembles. Absolutely. Woof. And the oof would continue.
This is one that was here. Oof.
Yeah. And that aspect, yes and no, right? That is one of the typical Ibn Arabi answers to everything. Is this world separate than God?
Yes and no.
And his answer is always, huwa la huwa. God, not God. You are mistaken if you think that this earthly life, everything you, I, the tree, the water, the river, that it is somehow other than God. And you are mistaken if you think that in that same capacity, that it is fully God. So he has this constant approach of when you are facing toward God, pure absolute nothingness. When you're facing the world, embodiment, manifestation of the divine. And this gets him to say these paradoxical things where the paradox itself is part of the beauty of his teachings. He says at one point, if you see God and you know that you are seeing God, you are not seeing God. Because that implies that you're still aware of there being something called a you, which is separate than God. So, how are we then to make sense of these experiences? And this gets us to one of the most beautiful and paradoxical parts of Ibn Arabi, And again, I want to come back to that sense of all I'm sharing with you is a little bit that I've understood, and there's much that I don't understand. So one of the ways that he does so is through this idea that there's a way of praying and there's a way of increasing in prayer. And he's here quoting one of the Hadith Qudsis, the sacred traditions of the Hadith, in which God says, when my devotee isn't just doing the 5 times a day prayer, but when they're increasing in prayer more and more and more, they get to the stage where if they come to me walking, I come to them running. And Ibn Arabi loves this part. And then I am the sight by which you see. And most people translate it as I become. Then I become the sight by which you see. And Ibn Arabi says, it's not I become, I am. It sounds really different. It hits different if you say, I am the eye by which you see. I am the hearing by which you hear. I am the hand by which you touch. I am the tongue by which you speak. That's the experience that he has sitting in this mosque. He says, I was performing the Asr prayer sometime around 4 o'clock or so. And then I had this experience that my vision was becoming spherical. That I wasn't just seeing ahead, I was all of a sudden seeing in all directions, all at once. Who else says things like that? The Prophet. The Prophet famously says that we can see those behind him because he's not looking with the eye of the head, he's looking with the eye of the heart, which knows no limit. Who else speaks like this? Allah. A verse of the Quran. The sights do not comprehend God.
God comprehends the light.
God comprehends the sights. You don't see God, you are seen by God. And I was telling Philip over lunch that those of you who came with us to Turkey, when we were in Ulu Jame, that magnificent calligraphy mosque, the best place in the world to see calligraphy, as you're about to exit one of the doors, Wallahu muhitun min wara'ihim. God oceanically wraps around you from the behind. So you spend your life thinking, I'm trying to get to God. God is ahead. And that word muhit means both wrapping around, engulfing, but it also means ocean. God is like an ocean, and when you're in the bottom of the ocean, the middle of the ocean, is the ocean above? Is it below? Is it right? Is it left? A beautiful prayer of the Habib that all the Sufis know, and they all cited. Ya Allah, place light in my sight, light in my ears, light in my tongue, light on my breath, light in front of me, light behind me, light to my right, light to my left, light above me, light under my feet. That's what this vision is. Wallahu muhitun min wara'ihim. God wraps around you from the behind. Where's my alidat? So you think, oh, I've had such a hard life. I've experienced all of this. I'm trying to leave all that stuff behind and get ahead. And then you discover that the stuff that you think you were leaving behind, God was actually reaching through that to wrap around you. As Rumi would put it, you come here with a wound, but the wound is where the light enters you. And so sitting in this mosque, doing his prayers, Ibn Arabi has that experience of, I've let go of my human sight, my human faculties, and it is God that sees. But if you just behaved like that, well, then you would kind of be full of yourself. So what's the check? How do you check yourself from just turning into an egotistical narcissist? And that's the secret of the Maghreb. You serve the folk. You love the folk. Humility. So most of the teachers that Ibn Arabi has combine this extraordinary spiritual power with the ability to model a kind of humility in practice. So I've got a few stories of these for you, just as a way of seeing how this looks like in action. In the Chishti tradition, there is a very simple practice, and I would love for you to try this for 24 hours and be gentle with yourselves. And here's the task. Go for 24 hours, so starting now for tomorrow afternoon. Try to avoid using the words I or me. See how long you get. Don't be harsh on yourself. Just catch yourself. Oh, right, okay, I did it again. Oh, I did. Just noticed how often we speak by centering our own position, our own self, our own experience. So one of the sheikhs that Ibn Arabi has, a guy by the name of Abu Hassan Sarkaz, he has one practice, and his practice is never said I. Never. He has another sheikh. The reason I was asking us not to sit with our back, he said he was 64 years old when I met him. Not one time did he turn his back on the Qibla. So he has like almost this inner radar of which how to orient himself towards God, never turn his back on that. He has an early teacher named Mirtoli. I am challenged by Mirtoli because Mirtoli was a humble imam of a small mosque, and he had a beautiful library of books. I have a beautiful library of books. I love my books. I had books before I met my wife. The books were my girlfriends. The books were my wife's. The books were my beloveds. I could tell you where I got every single book from. Whenever Mirtoli would hear that there was a poor person who didn't have food in the neighborhood, he would take one of his books, which meant a manuscript, he would sell it, and he would take that money and give it to the poor. That was his spiritual practice. And when he sold his last book, he died. These were the people that Ibn Arabi grows up with. His first two teachers were women. We've been talking about the extraordinary perspective that Ibn Arabi has towards women. By the way, some years ago, there was a whole big, kerfuffle? Kerfuffle about can women lead a mixed congregation prayer? Can women lead men and women in prayer? Some of us, myself included, publicly wrote in defense of that position. Ibn Arabi thought, absolutely. Absolutely. 1,000 years ago, he's writing about all that matters is light and faith and presence in God. It has nothing to do with being male or female. Does it have something to do with the fact that his first two sheikhs really are women? Maybe. It seems like most of the people that received ijaza, permission from him to teach the Futuhat, were women. So he has a 90-year-old sheikha in Sevilla, Fatima Muthanna. And he describes her as being so stunningly beautiful, 90-year-old woman, that he cannot bring himself to look at her. It's like I would blush when I would look at her. Some of these women also seem to have a superpower, and their superpower was the Quran. So Fatima's superpower was Surah Al-Fatiha. It's like, oh, I don't have potatoes for cooking. Fatiha, I need some potatoes. Fatiha would go and bring her potatoes. Like there's this amazing relationship with the Quran. Any of us who've struggled with deep depression, psychotic episodes and thoughts, Ibn Arabi had them too. As a young man, he says, I was having the most horrible dream of being attacked by demons, essentially. And then came this warrior of light with a sword drawn and started defending me and decimating the demons until they all fled. And I said, who are you? And the warrior of light says, I am Surah Yasin. I am the chapter of Yasin from the Quran. And he says, and I woke up and there was my father in tears and he was reciting Surah Yasin. This is a different kind of a relationship. And Fatima al-Mufalla, this 90-year-old Sevilla woman, loved and adored Ibn Arabi. And the other students were kind of jealous. And so eventually they say, like, why do you love him so much? How come you don't love us as much? And her answer was so beautiful. She said, I would love all of you the same. But when you come here with half of yourself. Your mind is thinking about your to-do list. Your mind is thinking about all the things you have to do. Half of you is here, so you can only get half of the love. He said, when Ibn Arabi comes, he sits with all of himself. When he's listening, he listens with all of himself. And when it's time to go, he gets up with all of himself. All of him is here, and so I can give him all of the love. That's such a practice. And it's such a challenge for us who are always distracted, always being pulled in these different directions. And a lot of the Sufi practice is really this art of being present. And they oftentimes go back to the Prophet. I think we talked about this, but when the Habib would talk with someone, right, it was never like turning his head and talking with them. And he would turn his whole body so that his shoulders were square with their shoulders and maintaining eye contact. And the descriptions that we get, the way that people felt around him, was never that he made me feel like the most important person in the world. They say he made us feel like the only person in the world. And then when that conversation would be over, he would shift his whole being to the next person and the next person. And that's what the goal of the Sufi path also really is. It's a series of presences. what else should I share with you that people gain? Ibn Arabi's life is also really extraordinary in the way that it teaches us about what it means to have a sheikh, what it means to have a teacher. And we've been talking about some of the different ways in which the ideas of having a teacher have changed, and sometimes they get a little bit more formal, sometimes they get a little bit more towards friendship. But one thing that Ibn Arabi says about his relationship with one of his teachers is, I was his student and he was my student. I served him and he served me, to the point that I don't know who was the master and who was the seeker. That's a really powerful insight that I think, particularly when you get to the later hierarchical models of Sufism, it's really powerful to keep that one in mind. It's about love and service and friendship and companionship. Is it possible that that's something that he gets to later on in his life? Maybe. Maybe. He has certainly that same sense about his wife. He describes her name was Maryam. All right. Calls her my saintly wife. My saintly wife, Maryam, the daughter of Muhammad. He said, as for qualities like trust, certainty, perseverance, resolution, sincerity, I myself have never seen one with that degree of mystical experience. Ibn Arabi has an extraordinary place for sensuality, particularly in terms of men and women. He writes this beautiful book called Fusus al-Hikam. Can I borrow your ring for 1 second? God knows if it comes off. Anyway. Somebody who has it. Oh, yeah. So, look at a ring like this that has a stone in the middle, and then there's this setting in which the stone is lowered. So we would call this setting bezel. That's a fas or fusus is a plural. And so he writes a book that's called The Ring Setting of Wisdom. So wisdom is the jewel that you place in the setting. And he goes through all of the named prophets, starting with Adam, ending with Muhammad. And he says there's a quality or a teaching or a saying that is directly linked to each one of them. And the last chapter is for the Habib. In the beginning, he says, to be a person of faith is to have a heart that is open and receptive and dynamic to all of these paths. And a heart that is closed to one of the paths is limiting God. Limiting God. When he comes to the Prophet Muhammad, the saying that he chooses, for him, this is the whole encapsulation of the Prophet. It's this saying, from this world of yours, I was made to love 3 things. Perfume, women, but the thing that brings delight to my eyes, refreshes my soul, is prayer. And for Ibn Arabi, this is the whole encapsulation of the Muhammadi experience. And his whole chapter is a commentary really on the same. Perfume, everything that has to do with the senses. Like we were all gifted a beautiful perfume from Sidi Fuad in the Zikr. Everything in the natural realm that beautifies and is made beautiful. Women, so it's the Prophet speaking as a male, that relationship between men and women, love, sensuality, to the point that they talk about, and I will be a very proper Persian boy here and use my words carefully, that the experience of making love when you become forgetful of where your body ends and the beloved's body begins is as close to a genuine experience of dissolving away in God as you can have in this world. So they were certainly not free love hippies, right? They had a sense that that kind of sensuality, sexuality has a proper context. But within that proper context, what they have to say would blow the mind of most contemporary Muslims. Ibn Arabi's near contemporary Rumi, when he's about to die, of all the people who are inconsolable, the most inconsolable is his wife. She's utterly in a ruined state, and she just says, you are Jana Jahana. You're the soul of the whole world to me. Where am I ever going to find another love like yours? And on his deathbed, he writes one of his final poems, which is for her. And he says, my beloved, in this world, I have had two attachments. One has been to you, the other has been to my body. The time has come to let go of one of them. And I will never let go of you. The body will return to its mother, the earth. The love that you and I have shared knows no beginning, and it will know no end. And I will be always yours and with you. The guy is good. The bar is, I would hate to be the guy who tries to take Mrs. Rumi out on a date. You know? What can the guy say? Hey, it's like, well, Rumi already told me that, you know. But that notion of a profound, sensual, love-based relationship is at the heart. Ibn Arabi says there's no higher form of meditation than that which men and women can see in each other. You see God in the form of your partner. And the last one is, of course, prayer. So nature, sensuality, prayer, that's the Muhammadi experience for Ibn Arabi. Anyway, I should not... I know it's after lunch, and after lunch, it's time for rest and rejuvenation. So I thought before we give you a chance to do your prayers here, Shay has asked me about alchemy and hermeticism. And I thought, since we're here in Morocco, in this place that has such a powerful, powerful connection to the Habib, to the Blessed Prophet. What better way than to end by a poem that Ibn Arabi writes, which is about both alchemy and about the Prophet. So he writes a poem about Medina, the city of the Prophet. And we'll make a prayer here that may those of you, those of us who are so inclined, may we be blessed, inshallah, to continue this journey together in Medina. And this is his poem. He says, "Tell me, friend, which place do you want me to take you to?" And his friend is asked on this, and Ibn Arabi answers, "I want to go to the Madinat al-Nabi. I want to go to the city of the Prophet in search of the station of illumination, the station of radiance, and I am on a quest for the red sulfur." Red sulfur, al-Kabrit al-Ahmar, is what those of you who are Harry Potter fans would know as the Philosopher's Stone or the Sorcerer's Stone. In America and England, they published the book under different titles, but that's what it is. The red sulfur is the Philosopher's Stone, is the Sorcerer's Stone, and that's the thing of alchemy. Now, I want to go to Medina. I'm on a quest for illumination, and I want to find the Philosopher's Stone, the Sorcerer's Stone, to take everything in me that is base and lowly and to make it suffused with light. Light in my front, light behind me, light above me, light beneath me, light to my right, light to my left, light in my eyes, light on my breath, light in my hearing and light in my heart, until all of me is inshallah illuminated. So as our Desi friends would say, "Ahu Medina chele, easy mahin." May we get to go to Medina, maybe go this very month to the Medina, inshallah. So, probably, I think, alhamdulillah for the gift of being here. This has been a day of barakah, friends. This hasn't happened. Like getting to go and just sit in Mulli Idris under the name of Allah, getting to come here and have the door open and waiting for us. Alhamdulillah, there's a lot of barakah that you all have brought to Morocco. And I would love to give an opportunity, maybe like 5 minutes or so, anybody who wishes to offer some prayers. It can be in the formal Muslim prayer facing the Qibla, and or if you're inclined, just find a quiet place at the back to sit. And these are places where, as we say, the boundary between this lowered realm and the unseen realm becomes so thin as to be quite permeable. So these are wonderful places to offer some prayers. So let's take about 5 minutes for that prayer, and then afterwards, inshallah, we will be on our way.
Süleyman kuş bir gün bir de